nowadays with artificial intelligence, but maybe since the 60s, there is a lot of interest about to define consciousness.
Yes.
And I guess it's very close to the transpersonal experience.
Yes.
Because what is the human part? And in the human, it's so complex, and of course, digging in that field is interesting, and it's not on. I was thinking previously about the inter-religion program. It's of course interesting, but isn't it in a way a very mental approach to this that needs also on the counterpart a common prayer or common rituals to share the experience of the divine? Because if you do it intellectually, it's only half the human. I feel that it needs something else. For example, I like the Eastern way of being silent together. That's only this comment.
Sure. Well, I mean, yes. Firstly, let me talk about the consciousness thing, because that's very important. Can I just check something? In French, la conscience, ça veut dire consciousness.
Yes, we don't have two words. We don't have the word awareness. We need that word.
You don't have awareness. And you don't have conscience, you just have conscience.
Conscience.
And ça veut dire consciousness and conscience.
Yes, usually we say we are conscious of something.
So what's that in French?
Nous sommes conscients de quelque chose.
Okay.
On ne peut
Et
pas...
qu'est-ce que vous utilisez pour ça? C'est la conscience.
La conscience.
Right. Okay. Now this is linguistically very
mais
interesting.
la conscience comme ça, it's seldom used. Et c'est toujours la conscience de quelque chose.
Okay. Okay. And if I want to talk about conscience in the British way of, it's wrong to imprison people and without judgment. Those ICE people have no conscience. How would I say that in French? Les bureaucrates qui arrestent les hommes, ils manquent la conscience.
Ouais. Ah.
C'est le même mot.
Oui. There is a kind of moral aspect of the word conscious.
Yes.
You don't listen to your inner voice to say that if you're doing is right or wrong. I just...
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a hugely important area, and there are people now researching consciousness. It's a whole field of studies.
Yes.
There's conferences, journals into consciousness studies.
Yeah.
And they've discovered very interesting things. One of my favourite experiments is the heart seems to have a conscious ability of its own. It has its own neurological network, as well as the brain. And it can feel and sense things before they even happen. So at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, they've done experiments whereby they show people a sequence of pictures on a screen every 3 seconds. And 9/10 of them are lovely, farmers dancing in the woods and things. But every couple of minutes there's a horrible one of a baby being beaten or nuclear weapon going off or something, And then they wire you up, show you the sequence, and your heart registers a bad one's about to come up before it comes up. So your brain hasn't seen it yet, but your heart knows it's coming up next, and it goes into panic because it's about to show a horrible corpse or something.
Oh, it's incredible.
Now that's interesting. They're doing this research. So what is consciousness seems to be transcending time in some way, And I think this is to do with what we call prophetic consciousness.
Yeah.
For a genuine prophet, an Isaiah or a Muhammad or a Jesus, they can plug into like the higher winds of time. And for them, like 1,000 years is like, just a wink in the eye of the Lord, right? So, if you're a prophet, that if that society and civilization carry on doing what they're doing, they're going to come to a bad end, because that's the moral background of history, So that interests me also, this question about prophetic consciousness. What I didn't say earlier when we were talking about transpersonal is that my doctoral thesis as a historian was arguing for a new level of historical research which would look at transpersonal phenomena seriously. Because most historians are coming from 19th century view of the psyche, which is a materialist one, that what matters in history is power, battling for position, and the billiard ball model of old Newtonian physics, you want power, I want power, let's fight, Transpersonal psychology points to a higher, let's share, integral thought, let's find a way to satisfy each other's power needs or whatever. And that has always been a minority thing in history. And I want to go back as a historian and study times when altruism was the dominant mode of thinking, So that was the point of my research, proposing this field called transpersonal history, which is a new thing. Very few people.
Yes, but I'm optimistic because maybe 20 or 30 years ago that was 0.001% of population. And now I guess it's at least 1 or 2% of population.
Yes, they can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm optimistic too. The question is whether we can survive when the other people are still in power. The old-fashioned Trump-type Putin, I'll kill you if you don't do what I want type people. Because they've got access to nuclear weapons. And if they don't change their modality of thinking and listen to this stuff, then, dread to think what's going to happen. I mean, it would be a disaster. So that's a race against time, as H.G. Wells said. Okay, that's the transpersonal thing. And conscience.
But
what was your other point?
It's here that the face come. I guess.
What?
If you believe, I don't know if the word.
We have faith in the future.
Yes, we have faith in life. Faith in life, not in the future, in life.
Yeah, there's an innate intelligence within life. That
yes.
survive.
Even if the worst comes, that's life. We do what we can do, of course, but we are not the masters.
Well, we are humans, and we've invented all these weapons. I mean, I'm not a nuclear physicist, weapons specialist, but I could have been. So could you. We have the skill if we'd have trained. So I believe we can untrain. We can apply our intelligence to solving the problems facing real humanity, which is what those girls in the Quaker meeting house were trying to do. And the police arrested them,
No, but nuclear energy is fine to get the lighting as well.
Well, we've got to find ways to use our science to solve energy crisis, and that can be done. That's the point of my Green University. Anyway, let me move on to the last one. We're going to talk about the last one, humanities, 168, which is the very last of the boxes, and it's an important one. I don't know how this works in French schools, but in British schools we have this thing called humanities, which is a cluster of subjects that includes geography, history, religious studies, the human sciences.
Greek, Latin, I guess.
That is sometimes included, language, and literature. And so it's not the technical sciences, but it's the humanities, which are about literature, philosophy, study of deeper meaning and things, which have now become less important in the school structure.
Yeah, that's
Kids-
a big problem in
kids-
France as well. Oh.
Yeah, so I think it's a problem of the hyper-technological achievements of mankind tend to make people look down on the old-fashioned subjects. I mean, I had one kid say to me in a history class, "Why do I have to learn all about this past? It's all gone and done with. I don't want to know about that." You know, so I think the humanities are important. And history and geography and religious studies, which is what this came out of, and comparative literature, I think they allow people to orientate themselves with all of humanity. I remember growing up in Brighton, I went to quite good schools, and we had ancient history, Latin, French, and I remember thinking for the first time about, God, there were people 3,000 years ago, like Homer, writing these epics, and Plato, and I can read them now, and I'm part of that living tradition, that lineage. It was like a light going off, and it enabled me to orientate myself towards all of humanity. It's like, that person is not an enemy, it's just someone who hasn't read that yet, or whatever. Because these ancestors, they struggled just as we do. They had epic battles, they had moral choices to make. They didn't always get it right. There were monsters then. There were people doing terrible things. But there were also always voices standing up for the right, for humanity, for peace, for love. Christ is one of them, you know, very important figure. So were others like Buddha. And I think studying the humanities gives you a grounding in appreciating all that. And it does give you this, la conscience morale. That's the key purpose of this. So that you don't become just a technocrat, like pushing switches and thinking that's going to solve the problems. That's my other complaint against the Doge, Musk, Thiel mafia, which is goes back to this technocratic idea. And AI is the god that they're worshipping that's going to solve everything. So Musk is saying, well, we'll just change a computer system that runs 65 million people's social security things. And although it was supposed to take 5 years, we'll do it in 3 months because we'll use AI. Well, nobody knows it's going to work, you know. And it's such a risk. It's using AI as a kind of god. My problem with all that is that it's losing the humaneness of human intelligence. The humanities are about, by studying history, by studying religious studies, comparative literature and philosophy, you learn what it is to really be human, and you understand all the people that have come before, and why it's important that we practice the best bits of being human. You know, so that's my little song in praise of the humanities. Yes, question.
The problem is, well, it's a good example you took for the administration computer system, because we are in complex society. At the age of Romans, Greeks, there was no computers, there was no VAT, there was no so many things we have in our complex society to manage. So how can we manage the population? That's
Okay.
the problem, to make system not too complex. But inevitably, with the technology progress, it becomes very complex.
Okay, no, I hear what you're saying.
That's a big problem, not treated by humanity, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you for that comment. I would like to put a slightly different view, which is that what you just said is part of what I call the exceptionalist argument, that we are more complex than any other society that's ever been because we have computers. I dispute that concept. I mean, I just discovered today, in some research I was doing, a cache of papyrus documents in Egypt that have been found. They're called the Zenon archive, and they're named after actually a Greek, Zenon, who lived in Asia Minor, then went to live in Philadelphia in Egypt in about 200 BC. He became the private secretary to Apollodorus, who was the finance minister to the king, Ptolemy I, and then to Ptolemy III. They were building the Alexandrian Library at the time. And his job was to write the private correspondence, which covered tax, ownership, who had what rights, law, all that stuff. And scholars have just discovered, hidden away in the ground, 2,000 documents, and they're going through them all, looking at them in fine print. And for instance, there was a complaint because one of his Greek servants was prostituting some of the women in his entourage without him knowing as sex slaves. And they write a letter saying, well, this is terrible, what are you going to do about this? You know, so there's an example of, you see, things were really complex back then, even in ancient Egypt and Greece. And they had brilliant mathematics. They had to design, like, you know, the pyramids, but let's talk about building the Library of Alexandria or the Serapeum. They were very clever people. And they also even had simple computers. You probably know they found in the sea an ancient Greek computer
we
thing,
still do not understand those
which we
words.
don't know how it works, but it was like a timepiece. I mean, they had mechanical clocks.
For the stars.
They had steam engines that could play music. I mean, they were much more sophisticated than people realise. So I think the intelligence that gave us ancient Greek and Egyptian civilization is the same as is giving us modern civilization. We've just had a few, you know, breakthroughs like Leibniz inventing, you know, binary mathematics and things which made computers possible. But the moral intelligence of humanity is pretty constant throughout. And that's what's at stake here. We're not going to survive as a humanity by inventing some new gizmo. We're going to survive as humanity by remembering our moral intelligence. And that will only come, in my opinion, if we make history, philosophy and religious studies compulsory in all schools worldwide. That's what I want. At least as much as mathematics and technology. You know, because we're downplaying the humanities. They are compulsory in all British schools, and to some extent in France. You did some history, I suppose, geography, but it's always like dabbling. You know, I don't know who taught you history, but I think they should have at least as much kudos as the technologues, the Musk types. So anyway, that's my song in favour of the humanities, and yeah, that's why it's the last in the table. You see, it's a wake-up call, because if we don't remember that one and get that right, and if we only go down the artificial intelligence route, and like go that route of artificial consciousness, we're not going to recover our true conscience as humanity. But anyway, that's my take on that. And I've got a list of some of the great people. I mean, everyone should read at least some of Gibbon or von Humboldt. You know, some of the great founders of religious studies like Smart, etc.
Don't we come back to the problem of education and ethics? If people behave ethically, whatever the complexity, there won't be any problem.
No, they'll solve it.
But in case people don't follow ethics, within a complex society, it becomes much more dangerous and difficult to detect, I guess. Yeah. That's the way I wanted to see that.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. And if people don't follow that core basic ethics of what it is to be human, as Mencius said, there's an innate humanity in us all. Yeah. In Confucianism, this is the core teaching that Mencius explained. There's this innate ethic to become good, to follow the golden rule. You know, if that is lost, then, as I said, no matter how sophisticated your gizmos, I mean, you're screwed as a people. and we're just waiting for the alien takeover because they've got even better machines than we do, you see. Whereas I say, I'm on the side of humanity here, and I don't want the alien computer, robots to come and take over. Because no, we deserve a chance, us humans, because we have this thing called the immortal soul, which is unique, and to be valued in each other. And that's the essence of ethics. So anyway, that was my attempt, and that's why I stress the importance of human intelligence as well as artificial intelligence, natural intelligence, and divine intelligence, because somehow we have this faculty as humans to plug into that divine intelligence. As I said earlier about prophetic consciousness, and I think that should be more cultivated, more taught. I think kids naturally have that, and then it's crushed out of them by robotic education systems run by bureaucrats. I know what they're up to because I used to teach among them, but I was always the head of the philosophy department that could do the interesting stuff. And I'd like all the kids to have access to that, not just in the elite schools, but, because that's our human right.
Yeah. I come back to education. A paradox is humanity is decreasing, but science as well is decreasing.
Decreasing? Or
the level of science in France
is going down.
Is going down. So
among scientists?
Yes, the average level of pupils is decreasing. So it's not that science is getting over humanities. It's a general decreasing.
And what's your explanation for that?
Lack of attention, lack of effort,
lack of encouragement.
Lack of encouragement, I guess. More individualism.
Lack of good quality teaching.
Yeah, and I'm a conspirationist, so I think that's also a political. You see, the administration of education in France is we call it the mammoth. This is elephant ancestor.
The mammoth. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
The mammoth. So it's like politicians, they want population to be manipulable.
To be kept down to a certain level.
Yeah. So we
and
can
not enough to threaten the system. Right?
Yeah.
So the elites will go to Sciences Po and have their great.
I suspect this. I suspect this.
That's what it looks like. Yeah. Well, it's the same in Britain, where the elites go to Eton and Oxbridge.
Yeah, for the elites, no problem.
They run the country.
Yeah.
And and always have done. So why should we bother to teach the
average people? They don't care.
Well, you see, this is the humanities are very important in challenging that.
Yes.
Because yes, there've always been elites, but true elites are slightly different. The true elites are based on ethical wisdom.
Thank
so
you.
Epicurus or Epictetus was a slave and grew to become one of the greatest Stoic philosophers. In philosophy, it's not about how rich your parents are. It's about how deep your heart is and how much self-motivation you have for learning. So, I think that I believe that in each human being there is a thirst for wisdom, a thirst for knowledge. If it's not, filtered and fed in the right way, it can be evaporated, and it can turn in on itself, and it can end up into self-destructive behaviours, which we're seeing among kids, self-harming, huge suicide rates for young men, etc., etc. There's a lack of reason for living because everything is too complex. So why should I bother? I'll just do drugs and get drunk and etc., etc. Now, I think this is where the humanities come in. I think if we can give young people and old people too, I've taught adult education, a sense of meaning and purpose, and the struggle is worth it, and there is a place to get to. then I think it inspires people to realise that we're in this together. We're either going to escape this planetary self-destruction, which is that attitude of nihilism writ large. You know, if somebody does press the trigger, some Putin type, it's because they can't be bothered anymore. They just hate things. We have to convert them back to love, which is why I published this love journal. They have to realise that love is the answer, and like the Beatles sang all those years ago, and that love is its own self-justification. You know, that's the purpose of life, and that operates on different levels. So I'm an optimist. I believe, I hope, I pray that the divine intelligence is seeded within us enough to make those wise choices and to reactivate our conscience. But let's turn to the gods and ask them what they're going to do, because we can't solve this alone. We need the divine intelligence to appear. And Bishi agrees with me. Cat, yes. She also has a little bit of divine intelligence, I'm sure.
Sure.
Very much so. Right, you choose first. Okay.
You were very often one.
Well, don't worry, that's what came out. And then you offer me one. Well, if you want a different one, that's fine.
Yeah.
Choose a different one for a change.
Yes,
Okay.
maybe this.
And then if you offer me the pack, I'll choose. Right, there we are. Get the old team again and again. So we've got Krishna, 10 of air.
Oh.
You've chosen, who is one of the avatars. He comes periodically. He's Vishnu in disguise, and he appears on the planet when the planet's really going down, and there's wars going on, and people are killing each other, and people are lying, and you know the whole thing is collapsing. Right? I think it's a Krishna moment now we're living in, and he turns up as an avatar of the sustainer, Vishnu, to remind us how to manage this planet. I think he would agree with me that I mean his great text, the Bhagavad Gita, says what I've been saying basically about human intelligence, about moral conscience, knowing the difference between right and wrong. That's the core teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. And he says that even if people around you are going crazy and they're slaughtering each other, you have to keep cool and just keep focused on the inner truth, the voice of spirit that speaks through you. And you've been doing this for many lifetimes, so don't worry. You know, if you can't do everything this life, you'll get another round. And each time we go up a spiral, which is what the Druids say. Krishna's very druidical. We learn a little more each time. That's the beauty of life. Plato, I mean, that's what Socrates says in the Phaedo. I mean, I love that dialogue. He's even fantasizing like I do about the heavenly library. Socrates is saying, I can't wait because there's going to be like a great palace and it's going to be fantastic, you know. I hope so, I hope it is. But we need to build that here. Krishna is very much about doing what's right and living according to righteousness and love and celebrating life because of Leela, which is the name for the divine play, if you want. So that's a great deity to have invoked. And then we're echoed from Mexico and Latin America by Quetzalcoatl, who's come again into our cards, who's the Knight of Air. So we've got the 10 of Air,
Yes.
Krishna, and then the next card is the Knight of Air, which is Quetzalcoatl, who is the rainbow serpent, the feathered serpent of the Central American people. And he is, you know, regarded as a very important deity for them. And as I've said before, when we had him, he was forced out by evil, by ignorance, by stupidity, and he intended non-violence, peace, for his people, and yet other dark gods got into power and started doing things like human sacrifice and cruelty and bullying and misusing sexual powers for sexual abuse, and all that stuff came in. And so the people are still waiting for Quetzalcoatl to come back. He's going to remind us, like an avatar, how to live again. So if it's a Krishna moment, it's also a Quetzalcoatl moment of remembering our duties as humans. And that, I think, is what we discovered, hopefully, from today's session, that we can do it, but we do need these divine avatars to help us in their different, inspirational ways. And the rainbow feather serpent is our own inner Kundalini energy that has to awaken, which is the snake of Caduceus, which is the Asclepian snake that is a symbol of a doctor. So the point of this philosophy club and all philosophy is kind of intellectual medicine. It's about healing. Anyway, that's what I see. What do you think? Do you agree with that analysis, or?
Oh, I don't know that much about God, but of course I'm listening very with much pleasure what you are saying, and it raises, as a as a good teacher, it raises my curiosity and firstness to get along with that.
Excellent. Good. Well, I hope that that's part of my job is to stimulate people to study this stuff, because I only know it because I've taken the time to do it over many years, and the more I've looked into it, the more incredible things I find. I mean, it's endless, really. Yes. Well, talking of which, I discovered this amazing thing in this, what used to be the capital of the Idumean kingdom, which Herod was from, in this park in the middle of Israel. There are these ancient caves they've discovered underground. It's now like a sacred site run by the park authority. And they were inhabited by our ancestors thousands and thousands of years ago as caves. So there's new things to discover all the time. And tomorrow I'm having a meeting at the International Delphic Academy online. We're going to be debating and discussing. And one of the colleagues speaking, a man called Andy Garby, is an artist from Britain, lives close to where I used to live on Breedon Hill in Worcestershire. But he's been down these caves in Northern Ireland, which I didn't know existed, which run for like 35 miles underground. And they span between Northern and Southern Ireland. At the cave level of the underground, there is no like Republic versus the Northern.
Yeah.
And what he did is he made recordings in the underground caves, which have rivers and stuff, and then he wove them into music, showing the kind of absurdity of the fights going on the surface. From the level of the deep cave, there's only peace, there's only harmony. So anyway, he's going to be talking tomorrow. So, many things to explore. Okay, any final comments? Last words?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for coming, and our other friend who normally comes is gone back to Britain to pick up some more stuff, so he'll be back, I'm sure, shortly.
I